Every day we use countless electrical and electronic devices without even thinking about it. Our lives depend on devices that must be plugged in or battery powered. But in a consumerist society where we look for the latest models and bin rather than fix, it isn't surprising that we as a nation create 2 million tons of e-waste every year. But the question is, where does it all end up? Here! This is one of the biggest graveyards for electrical goods. So whenever you check something out, it should really be ending up in a recycling plant like this. Sims in South Wales is one of the biggest e-waste recycling facilities in Europe. Every year, this plant processes 200,000 tons of our electronic waste.
So this plant processes waste electrical and electronic equipment from all over the UK. That electronic equipment is collected from civic amenity sites, so your local tips. It's collected from businesses around the UK, so that may be corporate businesses or generators of electronics such as manufacturing or production facilities.
E-waste is growing 3 times faster than any other waste stream, so recycling facilities like Sims should be in big business. But some of your cast-away devices don't end up where they should, as the Environmental Investigations Agency has found out.
Electronic waste that is generated in the UK probably ends up in 3 different places. The first place is it's recycled in either the UK or another country in Europe, which is legal. That's recycled to produce the metals and minerals in that, which can be reused. Second place it might end up is being put in a landfill, which is bad because it leaches into the earth. That's illegal. That might be done in the UK, like fly tipping. And the third place it ends up is overseas, where it's smuggled to countries like Ghana, Nigeria or China, where it's broken down in unsafe conditions.
Unsafe indeed. In countries like these, there are few facilities for safe recycling. Plastics are burned, creating highly toxic dioxins, and people work with virtually no protection.
According to the law, electronic waste should be treated in a formal way. It should not be, if it's not working, it should not be moved outside any of the European Union or OECD countries. So the key thing here is not working. There is a legitimate trade in second-hand computers, for example, that go to a place like Africa. So if it's working, it can be shipped. But if it's not working, if it's obsolete, it should not leave OECD countries. But unfortunately, from our research, we still see quite considerable amounts disappearing from the system.
But how does it get here? In 2009, Sky News teamed up with Greenpeace to find out. They put a tracking device inside a broken television set. They then disposed of it in Hampshire at a local council recycling centre. The local council then followed their usual process of passing on collected e-waste to private companies, who claim that they will recycle it safely. However, in this instance, the private company which received the TV set relabeled it as second-hand, which allowed them to export it for profit. Sky News and Greenpeace tracked the TV set all the way to Nigeria. The people that you see here are risking their lives, working without protection, at risk of physical injuries and cancers. Unfortunately, scenes like these are much more commonplace than you might realize. The illegal exportation of e-waste is an issue of such global magnitude that it's attracted the attention of Interpol, the International Police Service. In November 2013, they launched Project Eden, a special initiative to combat the illegal trade in waste. Kees van Dan manages Interpol's e-waste project from Lyon. He and press officer Julie Cole-Bagel took the time to Skype with us.
Well, the main thing is, from our Interpol perspective, is that with this globalization, we see all kinds of waste streams around the world. E-waste is an increasingly one. It contains dangerous goods, and it should be treated well when it becomes waste for recycling or reuse. And this is where, because there is a lot of money involved, it is vulnerable for criminal activities, And this is where Interpol can connect our police community, our enforcing community around the world, enforcing the existing laws, or play a role and provide information to get those laws implemented.
Interpol is not alone in its efforts to prevent the illegal shipment of e-waste. On a domestic basis, the Environment Agency have also helped by tightening UK border enforcements. But MEP Catherine Bearder is not satisfied that enough is being done to protect the developing world from becoming our dumping ground.
That we need to be setting an example.
Since the May 2014 elections, Catherine Bearder is now the only remaining Lib Dem MEP in Europe.
It's illegal. You're not supposed to ship it out of the EU. But what they do is they just label the containers as second-hand computer equipment or whatever, working equipment. It isn't. Customs officers very rarely check what goes out of the European Union. They check a lot of what comes in. And we need to be doing a lot more training because it's really affecting the environment in developing countries where this stuff gets dumped.
In April 2014, the European Parliament finally confirmed new legislation imposing stricter controls on what can and cannot be shipped out of the EU. But with unwanted electronics passing from one broker to the next, monitoring where it all ends up remains a big challenge.
And that's down to the councils have a duty of care, the contracts that they give to make sure that they do the full audit, that the stuff really is being recycled and reprocessed and not just taken off. And it's much cheaper. You get the contract for recycling it, you put it in a container and ship it off to the Gambia, you can make an awful lot of money.
So what makes the illegal trade of e-waste such a thriving business? And why would anyone go to such lengths of shipping it abroad? Well, the answer lies in the value of the goods. Developing countries will pay to receive e-waste in order to break it down for the precious metals found inside. In the meantime, the private companies will get paid to dispose of, well, thin air. It's a win-win situation and a highly lucrative business. Here at Sims, where e-waste is broken down as it should be, a ton of one of these pellets can be worth around £5,000. Gold, silver and platinum group metals are commonplace in the electronic devices that they recycle.
Which is, the things you can see over my shoulder have been shredded down to a certain size already, and then we'll go through the plant and become smaller and smaller, and then through a process of magnets, water, lasers, air, will get separated into different streams of end recyclers.
But for the cycle to begin, our e-waste first has to reach the recycling centres. It seems that many of us are unaware of this and unthinkingly throw our electronic devices into the bin. What do you do with small electronics like this when they're broken?
Throw them away. Throw them away?
Where they put is I throw it away, to be honest.
When they're broken down, I would take them to recycle.
I don't really know where that goes. Honestly, I think it just ends up in the landfill.
Yeah, just go to the bin.
I probably throw them away.
Just throw them away, to be honest.
Well, usually we throw it away because there's not much value to it.
A report by RAP, an independent body created by the government, has revealed that hundreds of thousands of tons of e-waste are slipping into landfill sites across the country as a result of improper disposal. Limited budgets and local authorities means that black bin bags are rarely sorted through. In short, if you put e-waste in the bin at home, it's very possible that it will end up in landfill. Hi, my name is Leonie. I'm calling from City University, and I'm wondering if you can tell me how much e-waste ends up in your landfill site. We contacted a number of landfill sites across the UK to ask them how much e-waste they estimated had slipped into their sites. Most were pretty unsure and couldn't provide specifics, but some denied having any at all, despite the RAP estimates. What's really worrying with e-waste ending up in landfill is that it can pose a serious risk to our environment and also our health. Heavy metals and other materials included in the devices are toxic, and when these are left in landfill without the necessary treatment, they can leak into our groundwater and soil, which could possibly affect the water we drink.
A lot gets thrown away, mainly because I think we haven't done the promotion in the public sphere about what can and what can't go into landfill. And if you look on any piece of electronic equipment that you've got, there is that little symbol. It's a little rubbish bin with a cross through it. It means you can't throw it away. It has to be recycled.
The Waste, Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directive, otherwise known as WEEE Directive, is an EU law that was passed in 2003. It sets collection, recycling and recovery targets for all types of electronic goods in an effort to tackle the growing crisis of where our e-waste ends up. Since February 2014, all EU member states are now required to recycle 45% of e-waste within their own country. Do you think that's a good target?
No, it's not. Nothing like high enough. Nothing like high enough. We should be recycling everything that's possible, and the higher the target, the more it concentrates the mind, so that we start to cut out waste, think much more before you grab something off the shelf. What am I going to do with that bottle? Can I reuse it? Is it recyclable?
In 2005, designer Paul Bonomini was asked by the Royal Society of Arts to build a sculpture that could represent the amount of e-waste that the average UK citizen produces in a lifetime. 7 computers, 12 kettles and a whole bunch of other appliances later, and the WEEE Man was born.
The brief was basically to create a robot, or a head and shoulders actually was the original brief, made out of waste, out of WEEE waste. And it needed to be approximately 3.5 tons of waste, which is the average amount of waste that a single person generates in their lifetime.
Aside from the challenge of assembling a 7-meter tall sculpture, Paul also faced obstacles when sourcing the material.
Whilst we had access to some of the sponsors who were recycling companies, most of the products they had were larger items like washing machines and fridges and televisions. But getting hold of things like toasters and mobile phones even was difficult, because unfortunately people would still throw those in their general waste. It was a real hassle, it seemed, for them to get those to a recycling dump. So we were faced with the proposition that we didn't have enough small items on the piece, and our brief included a certain number of each type of electrical device, and we had to actually buy some products to bolster up what we'd already found on the recycling dump.
The WEEE Man remains a stark reminder of our consumerist lifestyles and of our growing obligation to recycle e-waste properly. Latest DEFRA estimates suggest that 10 million tons of electronic products will be bought in the UK over the next 6 years. This amount will include 7 tons of platinum group metals, 400 tons of silver and 20 tons of gold, worth an estimated £1.5 billion.
All those resources that we put into electronic equipment has to be imported into the European Union. Very little of it is naturally occurring here. So how ridiculous to import the raw materials, make it into a piece of electronic equipment and then throw it away. We can reuse that and reuse it and reuse it.
Computer Aid International have recognized that a lot of unwanted electronics still have a shelf life. Their fully refurbished donated equipment, wiping the data and reinstalling the software, before passing it on to not-for-profit agencies around the world.
We believe that reuse is better than recycling, because every machine that we get in and we send out has another 5 years of life. And it's not just one person having it for 5 years. If it's in a school, it's 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 people having it for 5 years. which makes a huge difference. And a lot of the places we ship to, they never had a computer before. You know, we've had stories about people just sitting there looking at them, too scared to switch them on because they think they might break them.
Computer Aid International aimed to provide 15,000 refurbished computers every month to those who couldn't otherwise afford them, both in the UK and abroad. In order to meet this target, the charity is dependent on donations of unwanted electronic equipment. David believes that the government should be doing more to encourage businesses to give their unwanted computer equipment to charities like Computer Aid.
The government should have higher targets, especially for large businesses, to say, okay, you've got to refurbish 80% of your equipment. Lots of the advice they got for the new directives are from big businesses, and they're not really interested in reuse. They don't want us to supply their used computers to somewhere in Africa or South America. They want to sell them new computers. They should be persuaded that reuse isn't taking away from the sale of computers, because there is a vast market out there of people who don't have computers. So, you know, it would be useful if they would actually see us as a leader point for their sales in the future.
According to the WEEE directive, manufacturers of electronic and electrical equipment should make their products in a way which allows them to be easily refurbished and reused. In other words, electronic goods should always be fixable. But is this important rule always being followed? We've been looking into different models of smartphones and have come across a number of online reviews suggesting that some products by certain brands are tougher to fix than others. One in particular is the HTC One, which users say is almost impossible to fix. We tried to get in touch with HTC to ask them about the product's design. They redirected us to an external PR agency based in London. Unfortunately, the PR agency are proving very difficult to contact.
All right, thank you then.
Apparently,
Bye-bye.
everyone is in a meeting and we'd be better off writing an email. We've also been trying to get in touch with Motorola because they pride themselves on their green design policy, and they also claim to make consumers' lives much easier. They were happy to put us in touch with their environmental health and safety manager in Berlin. We're now waiting for the communications department to confirm the interview. While we're trying to hold the manufacturers to account, most of us don't even try to fix our faulty devices. But some people are challenging our buy today, bin tomorrow attitudes. Here at the Repair Café, local residents are attempting to fix their broken electronic goods with the help of volunteers. This popular event is organized by the Restart Project, a registered charity based in London. Manufacturers' obligations to make their products fixable are put to the test.
And then these gentlemen over there, they do the electronic bit. Okay.
One of those gentlemen is Ugo Valori.
Radio is that? Who brought a radio, number 7? I'm one of the co-founders of the Restart Project, which is a social enterprise that was funded in 2012 here in London to help people relearn, repair and reuse skills around all kinds of small electrical and electronics. We decided to start running community events, we call them Restart parties, pulling together resources that already exist in our communities. We have wonderful skills laying around, but not often they are not really valorized sufficiently. Like, people that have such skills have been kind of marginalized and not particularly rewarded for those skills. So the idea is to bring the community together to relearn such skills, to share them and upskill our relationship with electrical and electronics stuff, and trying to avoid despairing whenever we have a failure with a product, and trying to learn why that happened, what are the steps towards making that product functional again.
But sometimes even someone as experienced as Ugo is faced with a model he cannot fix.
Some products are increasingly harder to repair due to the miniaturization and the design at the heart of these products, where everything has to be so small, and we see a problem emerging where some of these devices that are launched on the market now are definitely harder and harder to repair, and it takes longer time for us to repair them, and reducing how much we can do during a single event.
Based on what Ugo was telling us, we became even more keen to find out how important the WEEE directives are to the manufacturers. But our attempts to get hold of HTC's PR agency are still proving fruitless. We're now trying our luck with a personal contact at HTC directly. Meanwhile, Motorola are still keeping us waiting.
The industry has a responsibility by making sure there are take-back schemes, etc. So if you go and you replace your computer or your phone, it's broken, you should be able to take it to those places and they should be able to deal with it themselves, because they're responsibility. They produce the product in the first place. Sometimes the manufacturers as well need to build more longer life goods. This constant reinvention and reselling and repackaging of things leads people to think they must have the latest thing.
But not everyone is convinced they need to upgrade. Joanne's camera needs fixing. Instead of replacing it, she's brought it to the repair cafe.
I did try a proper camera repair guy, and he was, he said at the time before I got the part on eBay that it was worth about the parts cost as much as the camera. So, and then I found that for 20 quid on eBay. So.
Yeah, which seems like a good idea. Plus, you like your camera.
Oh, it's a lovely camera. It's the best camera I've ever had.
There you go. So great. Okay, so
that's the side with the broken glass. Just to warn you.
Ugo gets to work with a little help from an internet tutorial.
The spudger in the gap between the clip and the housing, then lift up gently with one clip.
The spudger, is that the official name?
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
And the Restart project isn't all about tech tweaking. The charity prides itself on its ability to teach fixing and mending skills to local communities.
Could you hold this just still here?
But while Ugo is fixing Joanne's camera screen, big tech companies are busy producing the next thing that you cannot live without. Apple makes a revenue of just under $2,000 every single second. We went to meet Professor Kevin Jones to find out a little more about why some of these devices are so difficult to fix. Kevin is the head of computer science at City University, holding a PhD in this subject field.
I mean, I think the basic idea for most companies is to maximize the profit they can make. If something is easily replaceable, easily repairable, you're going to replace it or repair it rather than buy a new one. Since it usually turns out that most of the profit to the company goes in the sale of the original device, they actually don't want a situation where you can trivially replace a $5 screen or a sort of $5 battery. They want you to buy a new $200 device. The other reason for doing it that way is actually the consumer's own fault, in fact, because we all want devices that are as small and compact and sort of nice looking as possible. Designing for that is almost the antithesis of designing for easy repair, easy replacement. If you think about things like cell phones, we all want things that look like this, which are as small and as neat as we can possibly get. That phone is almost impossible to repair in any reasonable way, because in order to get it to work at the level that you want it to for that kind of device, you seal a lot of things, you embed them in things like heat conducting substances, because they just wouldn't work otherwise.
The perfect phone. from one single piece of seamless, high-quality metal. Every detail meticulously designed, every function perfectly imagined. The HTC-One M8.
It's fairly easy to say that products have to be designed so they can be reused and fixed. Most manufacturers could say anything can be reused and fixed. I think it really is a question of whether major manufacturers take on board the ethos of reusability and recycling is a good thing.
We would have liked to know what the manufacturers actually adapted in their product's design. Talking to the manufacturers proved to be much more of a challenge than we'd hoped. HTC's PR team basically was in a meeting morning to midnight, and even our direct contact wasn't able to speak to us without going through them. And although Motorola's environmental health and safety manager seemed happy to talk to us, he pulled out last minute due to reasons relating to corporate policy.
Want to try? Let's see if it's going to work.
Meanwhile, at the repair cafe,
Right, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Touch wood.
Moment of truth.
What colours?
Yay! Fixed!
one more happy customer.
Excellent. Congratulations.
The Restart project is a great call to action that reduces waste, one fix at a time. The issues with e-waste can only be resolved when things change, both top-down and bottom-up.
So it's all the way through. It's government, it's business, and it's individuals. Everybody has a responsibility not to destroy the planet by using up more and more stuff all the time.
Almost 1/4 of all electronic waste that's sent to recycling centers is actually still either working or economically repairable. And yet we are increasing a throwaway society.
I think generally we've become a very wasteful society. We tend to discard things straight away. If you were in a place like Africa, they would make their laptops work a lot longer than we do here.
So we need, all of us to buy into this, member states, the manufacturers, the customers, so that we're much more aware. We only have one planet. We're consuming it as if there's 2 more planets coming along that we can hop onto.
With most of us embracing shiny new gadgets and being more and more dependent on these things, it's no wonder that these mountains of e-waste just keep piling up. We came across a lot of factors that are beyond our control, like the government chasing up EU directives on recycling targets and the tightening of shipment controls for exports. But what it really comes down to is our wastefulness. And although we all know that it's much harder than it sounds to take responsibility of your own actions, what we found in the end is that we should just think in a more sustainable way of what we consume and what we put in the bin.